So what I propose is that in the first part of the session, we talk about the definition of autonomy. And first, we will ask ChatGPT because we never know when we might get a good answer there. And then we'll look at a philosophical definition of autonomy, and then a philosophical social definition of autonomy, and then a more practical definition. All right, so let's look. I've got the ChatGPT here pulled up for us. I should have typed the question in, but I will now. What is autonomy in AI ethics? Let's say in 50 words? In 50 words. 50 words or less. Let's see what ChatGPT 4 has for us. Okay. Autonomy in AI ethics refers to the principle that AI systems should enhance and respect human autonomy. All right, well, that's autonomy means that we should enhance and respect human autonomy. Okay, so that first sentence, you can see this is classic ChatGPT. It sounds like it's telling you something, but it's not telling you anything. Autonomy, essentially, ChatGPT is saying autonomy is autonomy. And that's gone. Ensuring that individuals maintain control over decisions that affect them. Okay, that's better. So autonomy for ChatGPT is control over decisions that affect you. Autonomy emphasizes the importance of consent, privacy, and the ability to intervene or opt out of AI-driven processes. Okay, good. So the second parts are a little better. So ChatGPT is defining autonomy as control over decisions that affect you. That's a good start. And it is significantly intersects with consent. This is something that would fit well in medical ethics. All of us have had the experience of talking with doctors and having doctors spit out some crazy jargon that no one can understand. If a doctor recommends that you have a certain treatment or a certain test or so on, part of being free, part of having autonomy as a patient is being able to consent to those things, to say, yes, I want this test. Yes, I want this treatment, as opposed to just falling victim to some discussion the doctor gives and you don't understand what's going on, but you know you're supposed to come back in 2 weeks for something, right? So consent is that. Privacies, we're going to talk about that specifically in a few weeks. The inability to intervene or opt out of AI-driven processes. That makes sense, right? You can say, I want to be part of, in this LinkedIn, I mean, I think all of us agree that we have some significant amount of autonomy with respect to LinkedIn. It might be that in the future, people will feel like they have to be on LinkedIn, but I think it's still true that you can get away with not being on LinkedIn, that you have the ability to opt in or opt out of LinkedIn. The question we were asking back in that thought experiment is, well, I mean, is LinkedIn helping our autonomy or not? But whether or not we have the autonomy to be on LinkedIn, yes, I think we do have that for the moment. Anyway, all right, so that's ChatGPT. I suppose if I was going to highlight something, I would say individuals maintain control over decisions that affect them. That's a good start, control over your own decisions. I think that's pretty obvious, but it's something. Let's now look at the more philosophical definition of autonomy, or as I say here, other kinds of, they're not exactly synonyms, but they're words that overlap significantly with autonomy. There's the idea of freedom or personal freedom, the idea of self-determination, the idea of agency. All those ideas can be defined philosophically with really very properly within the idea of autonomy as giving law to yourself. That's where the idea of self-determination comes from, right? That you determine for yourself, which is not quite that you have control over decisions. It's that you determine for yourself almost what the decisions are. And then more importantly, is the second idea that there's the notion of self-determination or giving law or rules to yourself exists theoretically between two extremes. On one side, you can imagine an existence with no rules. That was, in a sense, that sounds like it's purely free, but it's not. If there's no rules at all, if nothing governs what I am doing or my intentions or where I go. And if there's no rules at all, nothing saying like, I want to obey the traffic laws when I'm driving, or I want to try to get something to eat when I'm going to the supermarket, or I want to get to class because I have to teach in 2 hours or some such, or 20 minutes. If there's no rules at all, right? There's no traffic rules. There's no clock rules telling me when I have to be somewhere. If everything is just chaos, well, that's not freedom. That's just randomness, right? I mean, if there were literally no rules, no time when I had to be somewhere, no rules about even how you would get from, I live in Brooklyn, to go to downtown Manhattan, right? It's a very easy and quick trip, but if there was no rules, right? If north meant south or west meant east, but then west meant south, if everything was completely random, I could never possibly even get to campus. And as I say, if there's no rules for time, if 4 o'clock comes after 5 o'clock and after 7 o'clock, but before 3 o'clock, everything makes everything makes no sense. So it's important to understand that the idea of no rules at all is not freedom. Freedom does not mean the absence of rules. It does not mean escaping from rules. The absence of rules or escaping rules means just craziness, randomness. It means nothing. It's just, you're like a mindless whirligig, right? Floating through the universe with no direction, no intention, no meaning, no purpose. Right? That's not freedom. That's just silliness. So that's on one side. The idea of self-determination or autonomy or giving rules to yourself, right, does not mean no rules. It means there are rules, but you give them to yourself, as opposed to at the other extreme, right? One extreme is no rules. The other extreme is other people impose rules upon you, right? That's also a lack of freedom. So you don't have freedom when people are forcing me, telling me I must be at Pace University at 2 o'clock today, regardless of what I want or what my own purposes in life are or what my responsibilities are or what obligations I have chosen for myself. Autonomy is that last part. Autonomy is the idea that I have obligations that I have chosen for myself. When I have obligations that other people choose for me, when they say, Bruce, you've got to be at Pace at 2 o'clock, well, then I lose self-determination. That's a loss of freedom. That's a loss of agency. And that's a loss of autonomy. So, wrapping this up, importantly, the definition of autonomy or personal freedom or self-determination is the idea that you give law or give rules or give determination to yourself. And it's between the extremes of having no rules, which is chaos, and having the rules imposed upon you by someone or something else. Okay? So that's the definition of autonomy. You can see that I asked Dali to give us a visual rendition of what autonomy is, or personal freedom. And actually, and if you look at it and you have an idea of what autonomy really is, then the image actually sort of makes sense, right? There's these two lines here. The man, the man standing forward facing this bright light, but you can see right at his feet there are the line veering off to the right and the line veering off to the left. And that kind of captures the idea, right? That autonomy is up this middle way. It's between these extremes of, at one extreme having no rules, which is craziness, and at the other extreme being suffering some kind of slavery, having others impose rules upon you. So that's autonomy. And I think that image is not bad. So Dali produced a decent image of what autonomy means. I think the Dali image of autonomy is better than the ChatGPT textual definition. Okay? So that's the philosophy definition of autonomy. Now, we can also think about autonomy or personal freedom in a more social sense. That is, not just me alone, but me in the world. And when we think of autonomy in the social sense, then personal freedom or autonomy as an ethical stand is the idea of freedom maximization. That is, or autonomy maximization, which is basically you can do whatever you want, which means that you can rule yourself. You can give whatever rules you like to yourself up to the point where what you are doing interferes with others doing what they want to do, right? Or in other words, up to the point where the rules that you impose upon yourself inhibit or block other people from giving rules to themselves, right? So it's fine for me to shadow box, right? To kind of dance around my living room going like this, and that kind of thing. Perfect freedom. I'm giving rules to myself. Maybe I do this to exercise, right? So my purpose is to stay in good shape, and the way I enjoy exercising is by shadow boxing against the wall. And so I give this rule to myself that every day from 10:30 to 10:45, I shadow box against the wall. Great, no problem. The problem comes when I decide to go out on a crowded sidewalk and do my shadow boxing, right? And you can imagine I start banging against the chins of the poor passersby. The problem with that, the technical problem with respect to autonomy is not that I'm swinging my fists around the air. The problem is that my free actions are interfering with the freedom of others to give rules or laws to themselves, right? The person who's walking down the sidewalk because they're exercising their self-determination to go to the grocery store has that self-determination blocked when I hit them on the chin and knock them out, right? So the idea of autonomy or personal freedom in a social context is this idea that we're free to do whatever we want up to the point where our personal freedom, the things that we are doing, interfere with the others' ability to do the same, others' ability to be free in their actions and to give purposes to themselves and to give to live within a realm of self-determination with respect to their own activities and purposes. So that would be the idea of autonomy socially. And then one sort of experiment that people, or I'm not sure it's an experiment so much, but it's a kind of a conundrum that people like to think about, is this question about whether or not, I mean, in some sense, whether or not it's possible to be truly free if you are living in a world with other people. We remember this childhood story, the story of Robinson Crusoe, who was left alone on the island in the Caribbean for how long? Who lived 28 years on an uninhabited island, according to the story, right? So there, the question is, well, does he have perfect autonomy? I mean, it seems like he can maximize his freedom because he never has to limit his own self-determination in order to make room for other people to live in the way they want to. But then on the other hand, it's also true that if no one is around at all, if you're just by yourself, I'm not sure what kind of freedom that is. I mean, to a certain extent, we value our freedom. We want to have self-determination when we are surrounded by others and when we contrast ourselves with others. When we say, look, there's a certain kind of job that I want, going back to the LinkedIn example, there's a certain kind of job that I want and that suits my purposes and interests and strengths, but it's different than the kind of job you want, right? And then when you're competing for the same job, right, then that's where autonomy kinds of questions can become very sharp. Let's say that you and I are competing for the same job, but I happen to know something about you. I know that you are, I'm just making something up. I know that you are an alcoholic and you get drunk every day at lunchtime. I'm not saying you personally, I'm just making this up. My competitor, I mean, for this job. And so now I have this question, right? We're both competing for the same job. I'm certainly have the self-determination, the autonomy, the freedom to say, look, my competitor is a drunk, right? No doubt. But when I'm doing that, am I impinging upon the freedom of my competitor? That is my self-determination interfering with his or her self-determination. I'm not sure exactly what the answer to that is, but this segment of the discussion is to ask the larger question, and maybe it's only in those kinds of situations that we have a sense of our own freedom and our own self-determination. In other words, maybe we only kind of feel free when our freedom is limited. So I'm not sure if you imagine yourself, I don't want to do this experiment personally, but if you imagine yourself on an island alone for 28 years, I'm not sure you would be free, maybe in some purely theoretical sense, but would the human experience of freedom be there, or would you just sort of feel like you were living in a place where there was no, it would be almost a place where there's no freedom and no freedom, where the question of freedom doesn't even come up. It's like living in a desert. There's no water there. So it's not a question of whether you like the beach or don't like the beach. There are no beaches, right? It's not a question. You're just in the desert. It's kind of like that here for freedom, I think, in Robinson Crusoe. It's not that he's really free. It's that there's just no question about freedom. It doesn't come up. It's not part of his reality. It seems to me that might be right. That being alone, perfectly alone, would not be freedom, but it would not be the opposite of freedom either. It would just be a non-freedom reality, like being in a desert, and it has nothing to do with the beach because there's no ocean. Anyway, that's something we could think about later. The main point I want to make here is this idea that within a social setting, one of the things that's interesting about autonomy or personal freedom is that freedom itself is limited or constrained. Freedom is limited or constrained by freedom itself. So freedom limits freedom, right? Because as I say, I'm free to do whatever I want up to the point where my freedom interferes with your freedom to do whatever you want, right? So it's a curious situation that freedom limits freedom, or freedom constrains freedom, or autonomy is circumscribed by autonomy. Autonomy defines itself. That would be the way to say it. Okay, so that's the philosophical definition, the social definition, and then in the practical world, there's also a set of ways of thinking about autonomy, and those the three key ideas. And here I've got Dali going again for us. Are the idea that in order to be free or to have autonomy, you must be physically free. That means just that someone does not have me handcuffed to a chair. Right? If I'm handcuffed to a chair, I have lost my autonomy because I can't go anywhere. That's the most obvious practical definition of autonomy. But autonomy also normally is taken to imply a kind of mental freedom, which is informational freedom. So if I want to go to the grocery market, but some evil person at Apple puts into my phone, or I guess it's Google, since I use Google Maps, some evil manipulator at Google changes the Google Maps, and now everything is reversed, and so I can never find the grocery store. I'm not really free, or don't really have self-determination. I cannot exercise my autonomy because the rule I've given to myself is I want to go to the grocery store to buy some hamburgers, but I can't do that because I don't know where the grocery store is. Or even worse, I think the grocery store is east, but really it's west. So in order to have freedom, or in order to have autonomy, it's not enough to just be physically free. We also need at least some minimal level of true information about our existence, our world, our surroundings, what other people are thinking and doing, and so on. We can't be free if we don't know anything. So that's the second side of the triangle of practical freedom. And then the third side is psychologically reasonable. Another way that we frequently, or I'm not sure frequently, but another way that somewhere in the world it's frequent that someone is losing their freedom, is psychologically, in the sense that that their minds are not working well, or their minds are, in a sense, short-circuiting in the way your mind would be short-circuited if it has happened to many people, that people get drunk and then they do or say things that they would not normally do or say as drugs become more penetrating or more severe, like psychological drugs or psychedelic drugs and so on, right? Our ability to be psychologically reasonable, our ability to understand the world diminishes, and that too diminishes our freedom. So just like we need to be free, we need to be freed of constraints. I can't be handcuffed to a chair. We also need to be free in terms of information. I need to know some basic things about the world. And finally, my brain itself must be functioning in ways that seem that are fairly normal. If I'm hearing voices in my mind, right, telling me quickly go to the grocery store and buy 40 pounds of bananas, I'm not sure that I have autonomy or personal freedom in that situation. Right? It seems as though if my mind is not working well, then in some sense I'm not acting freely. And then, of course, we see this in law. If someone drives drunk and gets in an accident, at least in some jurisdictions, you're not charged with murder or manslaughter in that case because you were not in your right mind. So there might be equal penalties for driving drunk and for causing this kind of accident. So you end up in jail for the same amount of time, but you're not technically charged for murder or manslaughter because you weren't psychologically reasonable. You were drunk. You weren't thinking clearly. So those, in practical terms, if we have the philosophical definition of freedom as self-determination, if we have the social definition of freedom as free to do whatever I want up to the point where it blocks others from doing what they want, and now we have a kind of a practical set of ideas, which is we have to be physically free, mentally informed, and psychologically reasonable. And then we, I will put in a very quick example here. This is from an actual research paper from, I guess, 2015, but the rules haven't changed since then. It was a study of autonomy as it exists in health and well-being applications on the phone, meaning these kinds of apps you have which tell you, well, you need to do some exercise, you need to eat this or that, or you need to take a walk, or maybe you should take a nap, and so on. There are all kinds of, and every day there are more of them, these health and well-being apps, and that we could ask the question, well, do these applications, how much autonomy do they grant the user? And so in this article, the authors say, look, we can think about that in terms of the degree of control that the user has within the app. So that would be something like, can I change, if it's a health and well-being app, can I change the goals that I have for let's say my weight? It's after Christmas time, so I was aiming to be at 190 pounds average weight this year, but I'm going to start out at 210, so I better adjust the average up a little bit for the year. Well, can I do that in the application? Something like that would be the degree of control that the user has within the app. And I think something like that corresponds a little bit with the physical the physical idea of freedom. Then there's the degree of personalization over the app's functionality. So that would be maybe it turns out that for some people, we'll just stick with losing weight because why not? Maybe for some people, one kind of diets, like there's the high protein. Every week there's some new idea, right? There's the high protein diet will work, or maybe you just eat a lot of lettuce and carrots, or maybe drink water without stopping and that kind of thing. Who knows? So the degree of personalization would be, to what extent can I make the weight loss sort of algorithm work in accordance with my own way of losing weight. That is, with a high protein diet or with lots of water or lots of carrots, what have you. I think that's also kind of like the physical idea of freedom. Then there's this idea of the mental or information freedom, which is the degree of truthfulness and reliability related to the information presented to the user and how it affects their decisions. Right. So this is just, if the app it has the right information about weight loss. if, again, I'm trying to lose weight and the application says, and chocolate chip cookies will help, eat lots of those. Well, then I have lost my freedom or my autonomy, my ability to control and give rule to myself because I'm eating lots of chocolate chip cookies thinking this is going to help me lose weight. It's not my fault. I have lost autonomy, personal control, because I'm being given bad information by the app. And then the next point that they evaluate in this article is users' own self-understanding regarding the goal pursuit and whether the app promotes or hinders the user's awareness of their own agency. That is, maybe the app might say something like, whisper something, actually, no one can control their weight, so don't worry too much about that. That's not exactly informational loss. That's more like psychological. It almost makes you drunk because it messes up with the way your mind processes reality and something like that. I think that's more of a psychological loss of autonomy than it is mental or informational. And then whether the app promotes some form of moral deliberation or moral values and actions it recommends, that is whether or not it gives you some self-consciousness of why you want what you want and whether it confuses you there or not. So I think that too is almost psychological. It's almost like if you're getting steered in the wrong direction with respect to why you want to lose weight. This is just a trivial example, but I think it serves. If you're being steered in the wrong direction about why you want to lose weight on some philosophical level, then perhaps the app is distorting your mind in a way that's kind of like alcohol or a drug. But it's not clear. As you can see, part of the reason I use this example is when you do it theoretically, as I do it here, it all makes sense, right? Perfectly clear. Yeah, right. But then when you actually do it in the real world, in something just as simple as an application on your phone, that, as I'm saying, we imagine kind of a weight loss application. When you just do it something simple in the real world, then all of a sudden it becomes really complicated. It's hard to distinguish, well, is this really a physical, the degree of control the user has, is this really kind of like a physical thing, or is this more of a mental thing, or is it more psychological? And then the same thing with the later ones. It's not clear if they're psychological or mental. It's really hard in the real world in many situations, to determine exactly in what ways our autonomy or our ability to give rules to ourselves, to self-determination, to determine for ourselves what our purposes are. It's very difficult, or it can be very difficult, to determine exactly what things are helping us, encouraging or making more robust or embellishing our autonomy, and which things are taking away. And then that goes all the way back to the LinkedIn experiment. And I think that's the kind of the big idea that we're trying to get at here. It's not just of course, the specifics are, we need those to go forward. We need a specific definition of what autonomy is. But the big idea with respect to the study of this subject is it's really hard to tell sometimes whether or not things in the world are helping us to be more free or taking away from our freedom. And that question, which has always existed for humanity, becomes it seems to me, is going to be pressed very hard by advances in technology and artificial intelligence. Okay, so we have some technical stuff, some practical stuff, and now I want to talk about the experience of autonomy. This gets back to the question we asked at the start. Well, what is autonomy worth? Why do we want it? And maybe this is if the big conceptual question or the hard conceptual question is, does something help our autonomy and self-determination, or does it hurt our autonomy and self-determination? That's the big conceptual question. The big ethical question is, well, why do we want autonomy? I mean, is autonomy worth having? Is it good? How good is it? We talked a little at the start about measuring it. It's really hard to measure. Even what is the experience of autonomy? And so I've tried to think about that quite a bit, actually. So what is the experience of autonomy and what is it worth? And we could spend the entire semester just right on that question. But we'll just have this one slide. And this is just a scene from New York City. Many of us have seen this. The tourists come to town and they're vaguely lost and want to find the World Trade Center or something, Oculus or what have you. And you see them lost, and maybe you're even standing next to them on the corner waiting for the light, and you hear them saying, well, where is the Oculus? It must be here, it must be there. No left, no right, right? And of course, if you live here, then you know exactly what the Oculus is, right? No, it's not left or right, it's behind you. You could just tell them that, right? Easy. And I guess everyone will have to think about this experience for themselves. But I myself, even though that has happened to me, I mean, for anyone who goes to Pace, that has to happen regularly, that you're just standing on the corner and you're hearing tourists saying, got to get to the Oculus. One says it's left, the other says it's right, and you know that it's just behind them. It's neither one. You're very tempted just to say, guys, actually it's not left or right. It's just behind you. Look, you can see it right over there. Look, there it is. But I myself, I don't see that. I just let them struggle. And I don't think it's because I am a sadist. I don't think it's because I'm cruel or want them to suffer. I think it's because that when people visit New York or anywhere, part of the fun, and I think part of the experience of being free in New York City is finding these places for yourself, right? It's there is some sense in which you're giving rule to yourself, or you're exercising your own self-determination when you set up this purpose of finding something and going to see it, and then you struggle and wrestle with the maps and all that, and then you get there for yourself. I think that giving people what they want, just saying, look, it's right behind you. There's the Oculus, it's right there. It sounds like you're being helpful, and maybe you are, and in some ways, of course you are. Right? They're looking for it. You can tell them where it is. There's nothing wrong with telling people where the Oculus is, but I think that it goes against their autonomy, their ability to decide and determine themselves. Sort of like in that first example of LinkedIn. Getting what you want is not exactly autonomy. Getting what you want can almost be a kind of a lack of self-determination. When I just tell them, look, it's behind you, there it is. In some sense, I take all the fun out of it, right? It's like, we were having, even though they look like they're suffering, they're not really. They go to a foreign place, and part of the fun, as I say, is to find your north and your south, and find the things struggling with the maps. So you kind of take that away from them. When you tell them where the Oculus is. I'm not sure about that, though. It seems like a close call, but my sense is that there's some connection between that and autonomy and personal freedom, and that when you tell them where the Oculus is, you're taking away from their autonomy and personal freedom by giving them, paradoxically, when you give them what you want, you take away their freedom. But I'm not sure. So there's a lot to think about there. But I think that the experience of the tourist lost in New York and struggling with the map is a lot like the experience of LinkedIn from the beginning. And there's something very seductive about getting what you want. Of course there is. We all want to get what we want. That's why we want things. That's why we try and get them. But getting what you want can be a loss of your ability to determine for yourself, find for yourself. And then wrapping this up, we were asking, well, what is the value of autonomy? What is the experience of it? I think that one way to talk about the value of it or why we want it is because of the fun these tourists are having. That's what autonomy looks like. Maybe it doesn't look like fun like laughing at jokes and drinking beer and that kind of fun. It's not that kind of fun. But it's a different kind of enjoyment or contentment. Right? The enjoyment or contentment of being lost and finding the Oculus for yourself, as opposed to having someone just stand there and tell you, no, it's here, right? Kind of impose it upon you. I think giving people what they want is a kind of imposition. It's almost a kind of slavery. It's a good slavery, maybe, right? You're getting what you want in it, but you're still losing your ability to find it for yourself, to live for yourself. And the experience of doing that, I think, is like the experience of these tourists. I mean, it's not fun in the sense of jokes and laughter. It can even make you irritable and angry. Like it happens a lot of time. You see the couples, they end up fighting left, right, that kind of stuff. Divorce time. So it's not even happy. I don't think autonomy is necessarily even happy. But still, people keep going to New York and Paris and different places and try to find their own way. And I think the part of the reason is because they want self-determination. They want to give rules to themselves. They want to determine for themselves how they will get to this place. And so I think something like that is the experience of autonomy. Something like that is what autonomy feels like. Okay. So, all right. We've done, I think that's a good start. We have done a lot. We have done a kind of a definition of autonomy. Well, we did the thought experiment, LinkedIn. Then we did the definition of autonomy philosophically, which is giving rules to oneself. Then we did a definition of autonomy that was a theoretical. Then we did it socially, which is this idea that it's freedom maximized or limited, freedom limited by freedom, or the idea that I'm free to do whatever I want up until the point where what I'm doing interferes with you being free to do what you want. Then we looked at some practical kinds of things, and then we finished by looking at this kind of the experience of autonomy. And so now maybe we can just take a few minutes for each of you to imagine your own experience of autonomy. I've given you a lot of information, but just like it exists, with real things, when you're studying something that's actually real, it's not just information and stuff. It's when you're actually studying real stuff, one way you know you're studying something that's real is that it's hard to figure out exactly what it is you know. So I will ask you just to take a few minutes to think about what exactly it is that you've learned, or what autonomy means for you. And there's no right or wrong answer, of course. Though for a test or something, you can always get some analytically right or wrong answer. You can say, well, what is the philosophical definition of autonomy? Is to give rule to yourself. But that's only a part of it. I don't think that there's any actual end to the discussion or to thinking about what autonomy means. But I will give you 5 minutes anyway to think about it.